Hey, it's Rick, aka Concrete River. What would happen if somebody made a super flavor tasting robot, but programmed it horribly? Um, so I needed a little bit of a refresher. That last batch of Flavourart flavors got really weird, really metaphorical all over the place. So I decided to go with something a lot more simple, a lot more straightforward, a lot more Flavorwest. So today I have Flavorwest's Grape Soda, their Grapeberry Ice, their Raspberry, and their Blue Raspberry. And the last time I did Flavorwest flavors, they weren't quite seeming saturated, around 4%. So I went ahead and kicked up my test percentage to 6%. And all these have been steeped for 5 days. So starting off, we got Grape Soda. Okay, so right off the bat, fake grape. It's a good start. To me, it tastes a little bit more like candy grape as opposed to soda grape. I realize that's sort of splitting hairs, but it tastes a little bit drier, a little bit less wet than like a soda would. You can probably fix that with by cutting it down with some other stuff like champagne or something like that to kind of get a little bit more of that soda texture. But just straight by itself, it definitely has more of like a chalky grape candy vibe. It's also intensely sweet, and so I was curious about this one. I'd heard that it had a lot of sucralose already in it. I checked out the SDS sheet for Flavorwest for this, and they don't disclose everything because, of course, it's Flavorwest. But they do tend to put in any weird chemicals like sucralose or sugar syrup or anything like that. So this says that by weight it's 30 to 40% sucralose. However, it also says by weight it is at least 90% PG. So that is more than 100%. So I feel confident saying there is a lot of sucralose in here, but I can't give you exact percentage because Flavor West apparently doesn't do math. Yeah, it's a little bit medicinal, a little bit grassy. Part of that could be the sucralose in play, but I feel like it has like a little bit of almost like a green apple note to it that's coming across just a little bit on the harsh side. I was hoping for something a little bit rounder and fuller and sweeter, just because, a ton of sucralose. But it's not a bad artificial grape flavor. It seems like it does better somewhere. This maybe seems like a little bit much. The sucralose seems like a little bit much, so I might aim more for like 4 or 5%, depending on how sweet you want it. In terms of where you want it, it's not a bad artificial grape flavor, but Inaware's grapes is actually quite a bit better, or Inaware grape, whichever it's actually called. I think there's only one grape, though. It isn't like the cherry situation. But that's actually a really good candy grape flavor, and you get to add your own sucralose, which makes this a little bit sort of hard to suggest unless you're having problems sourcing Inaware grape. This might be a decent substitute for that, but I'd rather have a little bit more fine grain control in terms of the sucralose content of a juice. But yeah, by and large, artificial grape, pretty true artificial grape, but that sucralose is a bummer. But not bad. It's kind of what I think about when I think about Flavor West flavors. I mean, minus the sucralose, but those nice, sort of bright, simple, sweet flavors, especially on the fruit side. That definitely hits that kind of profile. So, should clear the palate. Want you to get this. Affordable and refreshing. So Next, we have Grapeberry Ice. So Flavorwest picture for this is like grape sorbet or something. But I know it's grape and I know it's cooling. I've never actually had it before now, so we'll go ahead and give it a shot. Wicks are just a tad dry. Redripping at 6%. So that tastes very similar to their grape soda flavor. I think it's the same kind of bright artificial grape note. It does have a metric shit ton of culotta in it, though. It doesn't feel like a menthol, and it has that kind of like cardboardy culotta taste to it, which is actually really noticeable. I've been messing around with like WS23 and Polar Blast by Flavourart and stuff, and I've never noticed exactly how much taste culotta had until now, but it's doesn't feel as sweet as grape soda, but some of that could be the lack of sucralose. I checked out the SDS for this, and this doesn't have sucralose listed, but the actual like candy grape flavor isn't quite as vibrant. There's nothing that really makes me think of the berry part of Grapeberry Ice. To me, it just tastes like sort of a flat artificial grape flavor with way too much culotta added onto it, at least for a solo flavor. You can kind of taste the grape that they're using a little bit better here, since it's not behind all that sucralose. And it has almost like a flat raspberry sweetness to it. It doesn't necessarily... I'm not saying grapes are tart, but they're a little bit tarter than a candy raspberry flavor. This is just a very flat, sweet, artificial grape. Way too much culotta. Again, it's not really a bad flavor if you're looking for an artificial grape with cooling, but I'm not really getting anything here that makes me think that it's going to be a better choice than going back to Inawera's grape and adding some cooling to it. In case you haven't been able to tell, my favorite artificial grape by far is Inawera's grape. Yeah, that cooling tastes really cardboardy on there. It's giving it sort of an interesting mouthfeel, I guess. I'd say that's more about the culotta than any actual flavor that they're using. It does feel a little bit thicker. It feels simultaneously less flavored and thicker than their grape soda, which is a weird effect, but I'm pretty sure that's down to the cooling that they're using. So, next, what I have is Inawera, not Inawera, Flavorwest Raspberry, and then Flavorwest Blue Raspberry. So I thought this would be fun. Flavorwest Raspberry was on the list of stuff that ID10T gave me to review for Reddit, and I had Blue Raspberry sitting around forever. Haven't really done anything with it, so I wanted to see if one of them tasted more blue than the other. So here is Flavorwest Raspberry at 4%. Sorry, 6%. Force a habit. Flavorwest Raspberry, 6%, steeped 5 days. Touch too much airflow for me there. So, right off the bat, that is not a very good raspberry. It doesn't necessarily go floral, but it tastes bitter and chemical. You don't actually get that much like flat raspberry sweetness, or at least not the amount that I'd be expecting from Flavorwest for a raspberry flavor. It's a little thin and a little chemical. Actually tastes a little bit watery. Yeah, there are a lot better raspberries out there. It just feels kind of undersaturated, and I'm not getting much actual fruit flavor to it, but I am getting like a full helping of that sort of weird chemical bitterness. Might be a good reason that nobody really talks about Flavorwest raspberry. I kind of consider myself a bit of a raspberry connoisseur. This is not doing it for me. Maybe part of the issue is that I'm at 6%. So I will try redripping at 3 and see what happens. Yeah, it's kind of watery. Actually, at 3%, it's tasting a little bit peppery. It's not good. I would definitely skip this one. Um, so, seeing if their blue raspberries any better, this is again at 6%. This one doesn't taste as thin and watery, but it does taste a little bit chemical and soapy. It also doesn't seem like it's very good. I've heard from multiple people that this is a blue raspberry to skip, and I'm kind of thinking they're right. It does taste a little bit more blue, whatever that actual artificial flavor is. The jury's still out. Some people say that blue raspberry is just a dyed raspberry. They say it's based on some like exotic ass white raspberry or something. So there are people out there that swear that peach flavor makes its way into blue raspberry. Shout out to Edible Malfunction on Reddit and his blue raspberries. That it's actually pretty good, but this doesn't really do it for me. It doesn't really have that same sort of overt, over the top candy sweetness and fullness. And the top notes are super, super soapy. Yeah, I mean, it's better than the raspberry, don't get me wrong, but it just doesn't, it simultaneously doesn't feel full enough. And it just tastes a little bit like chemical, powdery. It's not something I necessarily pick up for a blue raspberry. So I figured after 7 weird Flavorart flavors that I found something redeeming in most of them, go ahead and test some garbage from Flavorwest. So, yeah, not a big fan of any of those. For grape, like I said, Innerware's grape is my favorite candy grape by far. For just straight up raspberry, I'm a big fan of Flavorart's raspberry. It gets a little bit floral if you overdo it, but I like the kind of candy sweetness and the balance with that one. Inaware's raspberry is okay too. I think it ends up being really intense. People kind of use a heavy hand with it a lot of times when they don't need to, and it also has a little bit of that floral note, and there's almost like a wateriness to it that isn't really fun. I kind of liken it to I have nephews. They're a little bit older now, but they used to do that super cute, terrible, awful thing where they like jam suckers in your mouth. It kind of has that like pre-sucked on sucker, like watery warmth to it, which I'm not a huge fan of. But basically any of those flavors would probably do you better than these. These are kind of a letdown. So this week coming up, I will go ahead and put out that coconut video, that cereal video. We'll fuck around with format a little bit, see if I can go ahead and give some useful information without breaking it down into full-on notes, but we'll see what happens with that. But yeah, if you were interested in grape soda, Grapeberry Ice, raspberry or blue raspberry by Flavorwest, my sort of unofficial verdict right now, probably just skip them. But yeah, thank you for watching.